Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Renegade Immortal episode number 193 based on novel. So let's start. The moon was bright and the stars were sparkling. The autumn wind accompanied Wang Lin's voice and seemed like it was unwilling to leave the courtyard. The story of the youth on planet Suzaku contained a hint of sadness among the twists and turns. This feeling became even stronger with the autumn wind. Qingyi's eyes had already shed countless tears as she silently listened. Halfway through the story, Wang Ping lowered his head, so his face was hidden. After that, he brought the child over and settled down on planet Ranyun. When Wang Lin finished his story, he picked up the jack and drank a mouthful before silently staring at the sky. Qingyi stared at the father and son before her with an unknown emotion in her heart. She subconsciously grabbed Wang Ping's hand and immediately found that his hands were completely cold. The courtyard was extremely quiet. After a long time, Wang Ping softly said with his hoarse voice, "The story was very beautiful. Dad, I'm tired." Wang Ping stood up and walked toward a side room in the courtyard. Qingyi bowed to Wang Lin and followed Wang Ping. Wang Lin was the only person remaining in the courtyard. He silently sat there and stared into the distance. The coldness of the autumn wind reached its peak at night. It took some of the leaves far into the distance. After an unknown amount of time, Wang Lin let out a sigh and lowered his head. He then picked up the jug to drink only to find that he was out of wine. Wang Ping got no sleep that night. He stared at the moon in the sky with pain in his eyes as he sat inside the room. Qingyi only sat beside him and held his hand. She didn't say anything and only silently accompanied him. It turns out, this was the answer. The answer I waited over 60 years for. The pain in Wang Ping's eyes became even stronger. It turns out I was refined into a resentful spirit by mother. Wang Ping lowered his head. His face was filled with bitterness and melancholy. At the morning of the next day, Wang Ping left, and Qingyi still followed him. From beginning to end, he didn't say a word to his father or even looked at his father. Even when he left, he did so early in the morning. He silently sat in the wagon and went far away from vast water city. He didn't notice that when he left, a gaze silently looked at the carriage from a distance. This gaze was filled with vicissitude. Wang Lin walked out from the room, sat in the courtyard, and quietly looked at the sky. "Perhaps one day you will understand," he muttered. Wang Ping didn't know where to go and was just blankly moving ahead. He felt very tired. It was as if nothing in this world could make him raise his head and take a look anymore. Wang Ping whispered, "Qingyi, I'm very tired. Let's find a quiet mountain village to live in." Qingyi nodded. Her eyes were filled with tenderness. Wang Ping and Qingyi settled down in an ordinary mountain village and they lived a quiet life. They were no longer young, and the passage of his life often flashed across Wang Ping's eyes. His entire life was 18 years of ordinary life, 8 years of travel, 25 years of battle, and 10 years of being the supreme leader. Although it was a short life, it was more exciting than anything ordinary people would experience. However, in the end he still returned to his starting point, back to his ordinary life. Every morning he would get up and carve wood in the yard. There was warmth in this ordinary life. Qingyi would always sit behind him and watch with a soft gaze as he carved the wood stroke by stroke. Father once said that carving requires one to use their heart. Only then can all the memories be engraved on the carving. Wang Ping held the carving before him and gently blew on it, causing all of the sawdust to fly up into the air. After putting down the wood carving, Wang Ping's eyes revealed a trace of nostalgia and he softly said, "This is the young father." The carving was Wang Lin. The young Wang Lin had fierce eyes, his hand was behind his back, and he looked at the world with a proud aura. Time flashed by and another 10 years passed. The passage of time wasn't able to wash away the traces of the reincarnation cycle. Life and death continued, and no one could escape the path set by the heavens. 10 years was a long time, yet it felt really short. This was a very contradicting feeling, but it was a true portrayal of how every mortal felt. For Wang Lin, these 10 years were short yet felt very long. His hair turned white and was very long, as if it hasn't been groomed in a long time. His face was very old, and when he closed his eyes, he felt as if he had entered the reincarnation cycle. During these 10 years of calmness, his understanding of the heavens became even more clear and profound. He didn't do this intentionally, he inadvertently and naturally gained enlightenment. It was like how most of the trees in the courtyard had died because they weren't able to escape the reincarnation cycle. However, after they died, new life appeared. Within the life and death domain, the changes of life were everywhere. If it was before, then Wang Lin wouldn't have seen the comprehension of life even if he saw this. However, now, no matter where he looked, he saw life. The flower by the wall withered every year but bloomed every year as well. The clouds in the sky would scatter but would always gather once more. Just like how some people died and others were born, as if there was a balance. It could be said that karma was also contained within this. Wang Lin was the only person living inside the Wang mansion. The surrounding neighbors had long grown accustomed to this. The surrounding children would often come here to play. At first they were afraid of Wang Lin, but before long they found out that this old grandfather wasn't scary at all. The Wang mansion gradually became a place for children to play. Wang Lin watched the children every day, and his heart was calm. Descendants have their own fortunes. He did what he should have done and said what he should have said. Whether Wang Ping understood depended on Wang Ping himself. Wang Lin believed that a child he raised would have a mind as open as the heavens and would be able to get through any restraint. After 10 years of time, Wang Ping was even older. He had entered the twilight of his life, but he had never put down the carving in his hand. Wang Ping softly said, "Father was right, an ordinary life is better. If I have a choice or if there is another life, I hope I can spend an ordinary life with Father in a small, mountain village." Beside him, Jingyi quietly looked at Wang Ping and softly said, "Since you already understand, why don't you go see him?" Wang Ping put down the carving of his father. This was a carving of Wang Lin from 10 years ago. He sat down before the table and gently said, "Let's eat." Jingyi, you don't understand. The wisdom in Wang Ping's eyes became even stronger as he grew older. In my heart, aside from the question about my mother, I had another doubt I dared not ask about. I had a feeling that this doubt was the real reason why Father wouldn't let me cultivate. Wang Ping's eyes revealed a trace of sadness. This sadness was very similar to Wang Lin's. He had seen through some clues but didn't dare to look deeper into them. Jingyi, I can feel that I have reached the end of my life. I fear I don't have much time left. You are a cultivator and can live longer than me. Once I die, please send me to my father. As for you, you are free. However, no matter how much time passes, you are not allowed to forget that you belong to me for one reincarnation cycle. Wang Ping's voice contained a trace of determination. Jingyi's body trembled. She was about to speak, but she was interrupted by Wang Ping. It has been hard for you, these years. As a cultivator, you can change your appearance. In order for me not to feel lonely, you have been gradually making yourself age with me. I, Wang Ping, will never forget this. If there is another life, I will never forget you. Tears fell from Jingyi's eyes. Her cultivation level had been raised by Wang Lin to the peak of the late stage of nascent soul. More than 20 years ago, she comprehended her domain while accompanying Wang Ping. Her domain was regretless passion. I'll even accompany you in the afterlife. Jingyi softly said, cultivation is mere dust in my eyes. I don't want to be a ruthless celestial, I just want to be a sentimental person. Wang Ping stared at Jingyi, then he sighed and softly said, why be like this? At this moment, a bolt of thunder whistled by as it moved through the stars. If one looked closely, there was an incredibly huge and fierce beast inside it. This beast looks like a chiling, but it didn't have a horn. Its entire body was surrounded by flashes of lightning. It was a thunder beast. There was a middle-aged scholar sitting on the back of the thunder beast. This person's cultivation was powerful enough, so he didn't mind the lighting form the thunder beast moving through his body. The bolt of thunder was extremely fast as he moved toward the northern domain of the all-heaven star system. His goal was very clear, it was planet Renyun in the northern domain. 70 years ago there was a change on planet Thousand Illusion. The Huan family's ancestor, who was in the second step, died, and it was suspected that a messenger of the Thunder Celestial Temple was behind it. This rumor gradually spread and aroused the attention of the Thunder Celestial Temple. According to the investigation, it seemed the suspected messenger of the Thunder Celestial Temple didn't leave planet Renyun, so he was sent here to check. The middle-aged man's cultivation level was already past the first step of cultivation and was at the illusory yin stage. He was sitting on the back of the Thunder Beast as he entered the northern domain. He didn't stop at all and charged straight for planet Renyun. There are even people who dare to impersonate a messenger of the Thunder Celestial Temple. This kind of thing hasn't happened for a very long time. The middle-aged man sneered. As a messenger of the Thunder Celestial Temple, his power was great. In the entire All-Heaven star system, aside from a few ancient cultivation families, almost no one dared to provoke the Celestial Thunder Temple. Just let me, Thunder Daoist, a real messenger of the Thunder Celestial Temple, meet this person. Don't think that just being able to use a few thunder spells means you can pretend to be a messenger of the Thunder Celestial Temple. Real members of the Thunder Celestial Temple own a Thunder Beast. Thunder Daoist patted the Thunder Beast's head with his right hand. The Thunder Beast seemed to notice his owner's pride. It let out a roar that echoed among the stars. They were getting closer and closer to planet Renyun. The end of a mortal's life is a century, but not many can actually live a full century. When Wang Ping was 72 years old, he felt that his life was at its end. A year later, though his body was still healthy, he could clearly feel that his life was about to end. Winter came early this year, just like the year Sun Tai left. The snow had sealed the roads early on, so the villagers couldn't go out and could only slowly pass the winter with their loved ones. The cold wind roared in the sky as if it was taking lives that were about to end one by one. The entire process was like a reincarnation cycle. The winter this year seemed to be even colder than the winters before it, and the wind carried bone-piercing coldness. At night it was especially cold. If a simple house didn't start a warm fire, it would be pierced by the coldness of the night wind. In a house in the western part of the village, there was a fire glowing in a window, giving off a trace of warmth. However, compared to the cold, winter night, it seemed so insignificant. The cold wind roared through the air and surrounded the area. The wind formed a mini vortex that kicked up a large amount of snow into the air. The livestock in the village were all curled up and slightly trembling as they resisted the coldness of the wind. The sky was completely dark aside from the endless snow. If one looked at it for too long, they would feel lost. Wang Ping was sitting on a chair with a carving knife in his hand, and he was carving stroke by stroke. He was carving a trace of nostalgia at the end of his life. What he was carving was still his father, but his father's appearance was even older. This year, Wang Ping often dreamed about his childhood and remembered drinking the bowls of medicine. The taste back then was bitter, but now it seemed somewhat sweet. What was sweet wasn't the taste, but the warmth he felt. Qingyi was sitting beside him and looking at him. There was a trace of sadness in her tender gaze. Bursts of roaring, cold wind came from the outside as if it wanted to rush in and take away Wang Ping, who was nearing his end. Wang Ping softly said, "After I die, burn these statues." He looked at the last statue in his hand. This was a half-finished product, and he was going to complete it. There was a huge, wooden shelf on the side of the room. There were more than 100 statues placed on it, and every single one of them was of Wang Lin. Some of the statues had a statue of a small child beside them. The child had a satisfied smile while holding his father's hand, giving off a sense of attachment. Wang Ping looked at the carving in his hand and softly whispered, "Father, I have forgiven you long ago." A bright bolt of thunder closed in on the planet on this dark, winter night. The planet's atmosphere instantly disintegrated as the thunderbolt descended and echoed across planet Renyun. At this moment, every snowflake trembled as if they were frozen in mid-air. Even the raging, cold wind collapsed at this moment. At this moment, all of the cultivators on planet Renyun noticed this powerful aura, and the might of the thunder exploded in their ears. The Sun family's ancestor, Sun 11, had been in closed-door cultivation for many years, but at this moment, his eyes lit up. In a flash, he arrived in the sky and looked up. His expression immediately changed. What powerful celestial spiritual energy and thunder! Sun 11 sucked in a breath of cold air and his pupils shrank. Behind him, the late-stage soul transformation cultivators came out one by one. There was a total of 8 people. Sun Chiming stood out and said, "Ancestor, it seems the person came with ill intent." The Ran and Zhao families also came out. However, they weren't as strong as the Sun family. After all, most of their experts had left a long time ago. Vast Water City, Wang Mansion Courtyard. Wang Lin put down the wine jug and slightly looked up. There was no color in his eyes, making it seem like he was a real old man, and they were very foggy. He only took one glance before lowering his head and drinking a mouthful of wine. A huge beast covered in lightning moved through the sky. 2 streams of hot air were flowing out of its nostrils, making it look extremely fierce, and there was a middle-aged man sitting on its back. He was the Thunder Celestial Temple's Thunder Daoist. His eyes were like lightning as he coldly looked at the earth. His divine sense instantly swept across the planet without any care. Vast Water City was included as well. However, for some reason, when his divine sense swept by, he didn't stop on Wang Lin at all. As his divine sense swept by, every cultivator on planet Ranyun trembled. Along with the cultivators, all of the monsters also trembled under this divine sense as if they were facing the might of the heavens. Even mortals felt the same, but they weren't aware of the reason. They only felt cold followed by a shock to their minds before they all passed out. At this moment, the entire planet became silent like it never had before. Shortly after, Thunder Daoist withdrew his divine sense and frowned. He searched the entire planet and didn't find anyone who met the requirements. When he withdrew his divine sense, the snow started falling once more and the cold wind moved again. It has been too long, maybe he has already left. That person sure is lucky. Thunder Daoist turned around to leave, but his eyes suddenly narrowed. His divine sense moved like lightning and locked onto a small, mountain village on planet Renyun. When the divine sense swept by, Jingyi immediately turned pale and her body trembled. The spiritual energy inside her body also collapsed, and it took her a long time to somewhat recover. Wang Ping was startled. He raised his head to look at Jingyi and softly asked, "Jingyi, what's wrong?" Just as Jingyi was about to speak, her expression immediately changed and she coughed out a mouthful of blood. A powerful divine sense pushed away the snow and wind and directly descended here. This divine sense was so powerful that it caused the entire earth to tremble. The thick layer of snow on the ground was suddenly shaken and launched into the air. Outside the room, the snow and wind that were just allowed to move collapsed once more. It looked like Wang Ping's residence was isolated from the world. Outside, the snow fell and wind blew, but everything was completely still near the house. It was as if all of the wind and snow around his house had been crushed. Jingyi's newly formed origin soul immediately struggled to release spiritual energy. This allowed her to take one step before this powerful divine sense, and she stood before Wang Ping. Her appearance was old, but her eyes revealed an unyielding struggle. "Interesting. You didn't pass out." The cold voice echoed through the room. At the moment the voice appeared, the door was suddenly opened and a middle-aged man walked in. At the moment he walked in, Jingyi's face turned deathly pale. She could feel an unimaginable aura coming from the other party. This aura was very strong, it was like the might of the heavens and was impossible to resist. Before him, Jingyi felt like she was only an ant, as if with just one thought, this person could kill countless people like her. She would die without a grave and never be able to be reborn. What really made her pupils shrink was that there were flashes of lightning coming from him. The lightning that moved around his body made him look like a thunder celestial. He seemed to casually step into the room, but the whole room started crackling. Lightning moved along the walls and made the entire house become a lighting cage. If one looked from outside, they would clearly see that Wang Ping's house was surrounded by lightning. The thunder beast was lying idly in the sky, and its eyes were filled with disdain. It was as if nothing in the world was worth its slightest attention. This was because it was a thunder beast. The holy beast of the old thunder celestial realm. Although its bloodline wasn't very pure and there was a very big gap between its ancestors, its pride came from its bones. Wang Ping put down the wood carving and stood next to Qing Yi. He looked at the middle-aged man and calmly asked, "Who are you?" The current Wang Ping wasn't like a mortal at all. The calmness in his eyes wasn't fake, he was truly calm. He stood before Qing Yi like a man that was holding up the world. All of this was due to his father, Wang Lin. 19 years of ordinary life, 8 years of travel, and more than 30 years of being a supreme ruler among mortals allowed him to have a heart that doesn't fear the heavens. He wasn't afraid of the heavens collapsing, much less of this cultivator. Qing Yi stared at Wang Ping's eyes. At this moment his figure was forever engraved in her mind. The tenderness in Qing Yi's eyes became even stronger. She dispersed her cultivation, she stood next to her husband, and calmly looked at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked meaningfully at Wang Ping, and his eyes revealed a strange light. This gaze seemed to be able to see through Wang Ping. The reason his divine sense descended here was because all of the mortals had passed out when his divine sense swept by. This was because his cultivation was too strong and contained a hint of thunder, which made his divine sense felt like the might of the heavens for mortals. However, only this mortal before him didn't pass out, and it looked like this mortal didn't even notice that his divine sense had passed by. This was why it aroused his interest and his divine sense had locked onto this place. He slowly said, "Interesting. No wonder you didn't pass out." It was like this. Just at the moment the middle-aged man stepped into the room, in the far-away vast water city. Wang Lin was originally sitting in a chair holding a jug of wine when he suddenly stood up. The wine jug in his right hand shattered and even the wine inside completely disintegrated. When Wang Lin raised his head, the eyes that hadn't showed any color for 70 years showed coldness that had never appeared before. This was even more terrifying than the time in the restaurant, referring to when Wang Ping was threatened inside the restaurant when they first entered the city. The difference was heaven and earth and simply couldn't be compared. Thunder Daoist's gaze fell on Wang Ping's body. With interest in his eyes, he slowly said, "It turns out you're not human." Before he finished speaking, Wang Ping's body trembled, and at this moment, the shadow behind him suddenly moved. The moment the celestial guard puppet appeared, it threw a punch. This punch created a sonic boom. The sound almost replaced the roar of the thunder as it charged straight at Thunder Daoist. Thunder Daoist's eyes narrowed. He had seen that there was a puppet hidden very well inside Wang Ping's shadow, so he wasn't surprised. His hand formed a seal, lightning appeared in his hand, and his palm slammed toward the puppet. The celestial guard puppet landed directly on the lightning and penetrated it. The puppet was completely indifferent to the lightning, and its punch landed on Thunder Daoist's hand. A destructive force moved like crazy from the puppet's fist into Thunder Daoist's body. It was as if a storm was set off and rumbling sounds were coming from his body. A muffled sound echoed through the room as Thunder Daoist retreated several steps, but the numbness in his hand and the lightning dissipated quickly. His eyes revealed a strange light as he looked at the puppet and laughed. Top-quality puppet. The celestial guard puppet retreated 2 steps. Its eyes were cold. Lightning moved through its body as if snakes were dancing. As Thunder Daoist laughed, he took a step forward. Just as his foot landed, all of the lightning around the house gathered at his foot and followed his foot down as he mercilessly stomped the ground. The entire world seemed to collapse at this moment. The house instantly dissipated without any trace of it remaining. The lightning spread like crazy, and Wang Ping was right in the middle of it. The celestial guard puppet's eyes became even colder and it threw another punch. However, there was too much lightning, so the celestial guard couldn't block all of it. The lightning was about to spread to Wang Ping's body. Qing Yi's expression was unchanged. She pulled Wang Ping's hand and looked at him tenderly. As for Wang Ping, he didn't panic at all. It was as if even if Mount Tai collapsed, he wouldn't move, because he knew that his father would definitely come. In his eyes, his father was the strongest existence under the stars. No one stood a chance against him. Wang Ping's calmness attracted Thunder Daoist's gaze. After taking a careful look, he was startled. It seemed he had seen through some things. The lightning ripples darted straight toward Wang Ping, But just as it got close, an ancient voice echoed between the heavens and earth. This voice was very ancient, and at the moment it landed, it caused all of the lightning that was moving like dragons to freeze. The blue lightning seemed to be alive, and some of its thin branches were only 3 inches from Wang Ping, but at this moment all of them were frozen. The voice only said one word, "Stop." A huge vortex appeared in the void and a white-haired old man slowly walked out from the vortex. He stepped on the void and arrived before Wang Ping. He then casually pointed at the lightning frozen before Wang Ping. There was a series of crackling sounds as cracks immediately spread around this ripples of lightning. In an instant, this spread like crazy and the ripples of lightning collapsed. This happened so suddenly that it caused Thunder Daoist to gasp. He retreated 2 steps and stared at Wang Lin with caution in his eyes. He wasn't able to see through this person's cultivation. He could see the person with his eyes, but with his divine sense, this old man seemed to not even exist. Wang Ping stared at the old man before him and softly said, "Dad." This call contained his decades of longing. The old man was Wang Lin. His originally muddied eyes were extremely cold. This kind of gaze hadn't appeared in his eyes in a long time. Wang Lin slowly said, "Thunder Celestial Temple Messenger." The Celestial Guard puppet moved next to Wang Lin in a flash and coldly stared at Thunder Daoist. Thunder Daoist stared at Wang Lin with a very serious expression and asked, "Who are you, sir?" Wang Lin looked at his surroundings. Such a large commotion, and yet there was no movement from the villagers. It was obvious that all of them had been knocked unconscious by this person's divine sense. He waved his right hand and a gentle light surrounded Wang Ping and Qing Yi. At the same time, he took a step and instantly took Wang Ping and Qing Yi away. The Celestial Guard followed closely after him. Thunder Daoist's expression turned gloomy. He let out a cold snort and also disappeared after a step. Wang Lin appeared above a vast, uninhabited plain in the western part of planet Renyun. Wang Ping and Qing Yi also appeared with a gentle light surrounding them. At the same time, thunder flashed 1,000 feet before them and Thunder Daoist appeared. The moment he appeared, a large amount of lightning appeared around him. At this moment, the entire sky darkened and bursts of lightning came from the clouds. It was very shocking. Thunder Daoist's voice was cold as he stared at Wang Lin and slowly said, "I don't care who you are. Leave behind the puppet and this old man will spare the 3 of you." Wang Lin's eyes became even colder and he calmly said, "Even if you let me go, I will not let you off. If I was a step slower, my son would have died by your hand. This matter has touched my bottom line. I don't care what your identity is, today you'll die." His voice was filled with resolve, and killing intent suddenly appeared. At the same time, the Celestial Guard stepped forth and its entire body released a golden glow. It rushed forward like a man made of gold and threw a punch at Thunder Daoist. Thunder Daoist slapped his bag of holding and a thunder net appeared in his hand. His hand formed a seal and threw the net. The net suddenly became large enough to cover the heavens and earth before it quickly began to contract toward the Celestial Guard. There were countless runes flashing on the thunder net. It was extremely tenacious, so the punch from the Celestial Guardian puppet wasn't able to shatter it. This old man is a messenger of the Thunder Celestial Temple. With your strength, even if you have this puppet, it will be impossible to kill me. Thunder Daoist didn't even look at the thunder net as his hand formed a seal. He then shot out a bolt of lightning toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin's expression remained neutral and he didn't even dodge the bolt of lightning. As it closed in, he merely opened his mouth, and before Thunder Daoist's gaze of disbelief, Wang Lin devoured the lightning. Burst of lightning moved around Wang Lin's body, giving off crackling sounds. This tiny amount of lightning isn't enough. Wang Lin raised his right hand and some of his origin soul immediately moved toward his right hand. A ball of thunder suddenly appeared in his palm. Although the ball of thunder was only the size of a fist, it caused a change in all the dark clouds in the sky and made all of the lightning go crazy. In an instant, all of the lightning charged out toward the ball of thunder in Wang Lin's hand. This scene caused Thunder Daoist to gasp. What he saw was all the lightning falling down like rain toward this person's palm. This is true thunder. Wang Lin's voice was calm, and he waved his right hand. The ball of thunder gave off a thunderous rumble as it flew toward Thunder Daoist. Thunder Daoist's expression changed greatly and he retreated without any hesitation. He slapped his bag of holding and immediately took out a black, metal bar that was 3 feet long and 1 inch thick. There were countless runes carved on the stick and there were dark red lines interlaced on it. At the moment Wang Lin's ball of thunder arrived, Thunder Daoist mercilessly stuck the bar into the ground. At the same time, both of his hands formed seals that landed on the bar. Thunder Daoist's eyes narrowed and he shouted, "Thunder of heaven and earth, gather!" The ball of thunder closed in with a loud rumble but was immediately affected by the metal bar. It unexpectedly charged straight toward the metal bar and then a powerful layer of lightning immediately surrounded it. As the lightning moved along the bar, all of the runes began to shine as if they were rapidly absorbing something. However, the ball of thunder was too strong. In the next breath, it broke, releasing a sound as if it couldn't hold it anymore, and cracks began to appear on it. But the dark red lines moved along the cracks, acting like a glue that prevented the metal bar from collapsing. The ball of thunder rumbled loudly, giving off a sense of majesty. Although a lot of its thunder had been absorbed by the metal, it still collided with the metal bar. At this moment, the cracks on the metal bar rapidly spread and seemed to extend all over the bar in an instant. Now the dark red line seemed to be covering the entire metal bar in order to keep it intact. Thunder Daoist looked at the scene before him with a look of disbelief. Just at this moment, the metal bar seemed to be unable to withstand the powerful lightning. After absorbing the entire ball of thunder, it trembled and suddenly collapsed before Thunder Daoist. It was as if thunderclaps had gone off and planet Renyun trembled. Large amounts of mountain peaks had collapsed, causing a huge uproar. The metal bar collapsed and the powerful thunder exploded forth with Thunder Daoist at the center. He was forced to retreat 10 steps and his face turned pale. He looked at Wang Lin and shouted, "You are the person who pretended to be a messenger of the Thunder Celestial Temple, Shu Mu. What exactly is your cultivation level?" The thunder power from the collapse of the metal bar caused the lightning surrounding the Celestial Guard to vanish, and the Celestial Guard walked out. Wang Lin calmly looked at Thunder Daoist and slowly said, "My cultivation level." He pondered as celestial spiritual energy suddenly erupted from his body. From foundation establishment climbing all the way up to soul formation. Then it continued to rise until it reached the peak of the late stage of soul transformation. This was not the end. As the celestial spiritual energy in his body burst forth, his cultivation level rose to the early stage of ascendant. As Wang Lin's body was being filled with celestial spiritual energy, Thunder Daoist's expression became even more ugly. Although he wouldn't consider a first-step cultivator a threat, this old man's cultivation level kept climbing, and he didn't know where it would ultimately end. The early stage of ascendant wasn't the end. As the celestial spiritual energy inside his body burst forth, his cultivation reached the mid-stage of ascendant. The celestial spiritual energy gradually calmed down and stayed at the mid-stage of ascendant. However, Wang Lin's aura became even stronger without any pause. This aura came from his domain. The limitation of mid-stage ascendant cultivation wasn't able to stop the increase in domain. Wang Lin's domain aura became stronger and stronger, causing Thunder Daoist's expression to become more gloomy. The increase in domain seemed like it was never going to stop and broke past what an ordinary mid-stage ascendant cultivator would have. At this moment, Wang Lin's white hair moved without any wind and he began to ponder even harder. The powerful aura spread out from Wang Lin and dashed out in all directions. It slowly covered planet Renyun. As his domain continued to spread, it reached the late stage of ascendant. This wasn't the final stopping point, it continued to increase. This caused Thunder Daoist's eyelid twitch non-stop, and he almost stopped breathing as his heart felt a sense of dread. When he felt the domain stop, he relaxed a bit and thought, a cultivator still stuck at the first step is easy to kill. However, is he only this strong? A large mountain and river painting appeared in the sky. This painting used the sky as the canvas and the land as ink. It was as if a mirage had just suddenly appeared. An underworld river slowly appeared from the painting and flowed slowly. However, the underworld river suddenly trembled and went into Wang Lin through the top of his head. While Thunder Daoist was in complete shock, Wang Lin's domain, which was about to peak, suddenly increased and reached the peak of the late stage of Ascendant. Wang Lin's domain stopped here. Thunder Daoist let out a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that Wang Lin's domain had broken through the first step. If that was really the case, then Thunder Daoist would be in for a gruesome fight today due to the assistance of the puppet. Thunder Daoist sneered. Just this tiny amount of cultivation and you dare to impersonate someone from the Thunder Celestial Temple. However, there were still some doubts in his heart. After all, that ball of thunder that Shumu used earlier was too shocking. This kind of thunder spell was not something an ordinary cultivator could have. He had only seen it from Earth-ranked messengers in the Thunder Celestial Temple. Another thing that made him suspicious was that earlier, his divine sense couldn't even detect the existence of this person. Although right now he could clearly see the other party's cultivation level, he always had a feeling that there was a layer of mist covering this person. It was like trying to watch the moon in the water's reflection. Wang Lin raised his head. He didn't have enough celestial spiritual energy, so his cultivation had stabilized at the mid-stage of Ascendant. However, his domain had reached such a high level which even surprised Wang Lin, as this was outside his expectations. Moreover, he had only released his life and death domain. There was still the Thunder Might and Karma domain that he hadn't released. The reason Thunder Daoist wasn't able to see through Wang Lin's domain was precisely due to the Karma domain. After Wang Lin's domain evolved, it would be impossible to see through it unless one was a true second-step cultivator. After all, the yin and yang stage was merely a transition between the first and second step. Wang Ping stared at the father before him. At the moment his father's cultivation level increased, there was a slight fluctuation in his body. He clearly felt this fluctuation in his soul, and it made him even more sure of his speculation. This video will end here.